And hello. Welcome to another episode of Burn the Golden Calf. Today we are discussing being aloneness. And so it seemed really appropriate to do this one alone by myself. So just me here today. As we're going into the holiday season, we're going to be trying to tailor these topics around the things that are most relevant to this season. Two episodes ago, we discussed love. And this is a time and a season that is supposed to be all about love. Last episode, we talked about suicide and how this is the time of year when suicide rates tend to increase, when people tend to consider, attempt, and succeed at suicide at a much higher rate than they do, say, in the heat of summer. And today we are discussing aloneness, because aloneness is what separates us from the feeling of love. And aloneness is part of the route that can inspire someone to attempt suicide. Aloneness is what a lot of people feel during the holiday season, because it is a time where no one is supposed to be alone. It is a time of year where everyone is supposed to have family, have friends, have somewhere to go, people to see, gifts to open, trees to be under. It is meant to be the most wonderful time of the year. And for many people, that simply is not the case. I know from personal experience, holidays used to be really rough. Really, really rough, because I felt that I had to put on a mask. I didn't want anyone to know just how badly I was feeling. I didn't want anybody to feel sorry for me. I didn't want anybody to pity me. And so I felt that there was this need to put on a mask that everything is fine. Everything is so fine. I'm going to be chilling home this year. Oh, it's been such a long year. I am so tired. I'm just going to be home, relaxing, chilling. But you had to say something to not sound like someone who was, just going to be eating ramen by themselves, on Thanksgiving or Christmas Day, even if that was the case. And I mean, I can smile and I can laugh about it now because my reality is very different. But two, because my mindset is very different. And that's something that we're going to discuss today, that often aloneness is not just a physical reality, that aloneness is also a mental reality. It can be a mental construct. I mean, many of us have had the experience of being in a crowd, but still feeling alone, being around people that we know, but still feeling isolated, being in a group and, again, putting on that mask of, oh, everything's great, everything's fine. But on the inside, we feel completely and utterly alone. We feel that we cannot share, and that if we did share, people would not understand. And so there is the physical reality of aloneness, and then there is the mental reality of aloneness. And those two things can exist in the same space, or sometimes they exist separately. Of the two, I would personally say that mental aloneness is much worse than physical aloneness. Because just because you are physically alone doesn't mean that you feel alone. It doesn't mean, just because you are alone doesn't mean that you feel lonely. It doesn't mean that you feel bereft. And there is a myth that just because you are physically alone, that you automatically must also feel bereft and lonely and sad and depressed. And that is not always the case. That is not always the case. Let's put this out there right now for those who are living realities that are not physically alone. Please do not assume that just because you see someone who is physically alone, that they are automatically sad, anxious, depressed, lonely, etc. That is not automatically going to be the case. Just because someone is unmarried, just because someone doesn't have children, just because someone doesn't have, a close circle of family nearby, does not mean that that person is automatically miserable, lonely, and unhappy and waiting for you to rescue them. That is not automatically the case. So please do not run out here trying to be Rescue 911 without actually getting to know people. You might scare some introverts. Get to know people first. Physical aloneness does not automatically translate to mental aloneness. Of the two, mental aloneness is the worst, because mental aloneness doesn't care about proximity. Mental aloneness is the reality of being in a crowded space and still feeling alone. Of thinking dark and hurtful things while you're sitting in front of people with a smile plastered on your face. That is the reality of mental aloneness. And the reality is that mental aloneness can exist. Mental aloneness does exist, whether or not people are physically alone. This means that someone could be living in the house with you. Someone could be in the room down the hall from you. Someone could be laying in the bed next to you and still be feeling alone. Aloneness is not dependent on physical proximity. Aloneness can also be a mental state. And there is no way to know what someone's mental state is just by looking at them. I remember I was at work one day. A lady came in and something just prompted me to ask her if she'd had a hug that day. Now, I don't know this woman. I noticed that she was wearing a wedding ring. So I was like, that's going to seem ridiculous. Like, why in the world? But I couldn't shake the feeling. And so finally I was like, you know what? Have you had a hug today? And she said, no, she hadn't. I'm like, would you like one? And she said, yes. I was like, here, I've got loads of hugs. Here, let me share one with you, strange lady who just walked into and that I'll probably never see again. If I had just looked at exteriors, if I had just assumed, oh, you have a wedding ring, therefore you can't know. And I have no idea what that woman's reality was, Maybe, her husband was in the hospital or away, or maybe she's someone who wears the ring because she wants to ward off other people. Who knows? But the reality was that she had not experienced physical comfort manifested in the means of a hug that particular day. And I suspect that is true for many, many, many of us. If you are single, this is probably a reality for you, maybe more than others. But it's been said that we need 12 hugs a day. I think it is. I think it's 12 hugs a day for just maintenance of our emotional health. And yeah, I imagine most of us are not getting anywhere near that. Anywhere near it. Unless you are a mother with small children, at which point you may be, overstimulated and overtouched. But I imagine the vast majority of people are not getting anywhere near the amount of touch, love, affection, intimacy that they truly need. I'm sure there are many, many people that you might never suspect. It might be you, and people would never suspect that it's you, who feel alone. And if that is you, then this is for you. So we discuss a lot of the issues here on Burn the Calf through the lens of the Bible. It's the religious book that I personally am the most familiar with. It is not the only religious book that you can read and study and that you can gain insight from. It's just the one that I am most familiar with. And in the Bible, yeah, Joan, it's up there. I'm gonna go back and verify, but I think it was 12. I think it was 12 hugs. And I mean, and if you think about it, in a 24-hour day, okay, that's not even half, not even half the hours. If you were in community, that would be that wouldn't be such a huge number. But yeah, for most of us, we're not getting anywhere near that. We're nowhere near. I'm doing well if I get a handful, in a week. I'm doing really well, not complaining. That's just the reality of my current single life. It is what it is. But yeah, most of us are not getting anywhere near what we need to keep our emotional love tanks full. And so we're going to talk about a few people from the Bible who experience aloneness. Aloneness can happen to any and everyone. I feel very confident saying that at some point in every life, all of us feel alone. I am very comfortable saying that feeling loneliness and feeling alone is a universal human experience. All of us at some point in life are going to feel alone. We may not all have physical aloneness, but all of us at some point in life are going to experience mental aloneness, the feeling that nobody sees, nobody cares, nobody understands. I cannot admit, I feel shameful, I feel guilt. All of us are going to have these feelings at some point in life of isolation and aloneness. And it can come through a variety of ways. So the first person we're going to discuss, Naomi. Now, if you know the biblical story of Naomi, Naomi has a family. She has her husband, she has her boys, she has her land, everything's going well. Then they move to a different country because of famine. And in the new country, the family grows. The sons get married. It seems like things are going well. And then her husband dies. And then her sons die. And Naomi feels alone. She is a woman who is far away from her country. And all the people who came with her to this new place are now gone. And Naomi feels completely and utterly alone. And it is because of death that she feels alone. It's not just because she's no longer, in the home that she used to have, because when she had her husband, when she had her sons around her, Naomi felt okay. It is when she lost these close family members, the people who made home, that she now comes to feel alone. And again, this is the difference between physical aloneness and mental aloneness, because realistically speaking, Naomi is never alone. Her daughters-in-laws step up to the plate. Not just Ruth, Orpah steps up as well. And they're like, we're going to make sure that you are not alone. And yet, in her mind, Naomi still feels alone. Now, this is something that I really want everyone hearing this, whether you're listening to it live or later on, to grasp, because this is something that hit me hard. Hard. This is something that I only figured out maybe 2 years ago. And if I can, shortcut your learning curve, oh, please hear this now. So often, our feelings of aloneness are not based in reality. They are based in our story of how much we have lost and how much things do not look like what we imagined or what we want. And because we are so fixated on how we think things ought to look, we don't accurately see how things actually are. Naomi feels alone despite the fact that she has two young women who are ready to uproot their entire life to stay with her. Naomi feels alone and bereft and, cast aside in the world, despite the fact that there are two individuals who have had a very similar loss. They have also lost husbands. They have also lost potential futures. They share a similar loss, and they are willing to walk with her, grieve with her. They are willing to be community for her. But because she is fixated on the story in her mind of how it should have been and what it should have looked like and how, all that I've lost, she cannot see what she actually has. And so often, when we are sitting in feelings of aloneness, it is because we are fixated on what we don't have so much that we cannot see what we do have. It was hard. It was so hard for me to come to the place of admitting to myself that what I wanted and what I needed had always been available. If I had asked for help, help would have been there. If I had been willing to be a bit more honest and a bit more vulnerable and a bit more open, all the love, support, home, all of that would have been available. But because I was so fixated on what I thought it was supposed to be and what I had lost and how it's not this picture and oh, poor me, it's not fair, it's not right, I could not see that I didn't have to be alone if I didn't want to be. I want somebody to sit with that for a moment. Because as we're talking about aloneness, I need you to receive this. And it is hard. It is so hard because to receive it means to let go of the story that you have been telling yourself. And I am not about to sit here and tell you that the story isn't true. It is. That is the hardest part of most of the stories that we tell ourselves, is that they do have a basis in truth. It is true that, I lost my parents. It is true that I was raised in a very sheltered environment. And so I didn't have, the extended network and all that is true. All that is very true. And what is also true is that had I made an effort to reach out to those who were reaching out to me, I could have had the community, the family, I could have had all the things that I said I wanted as I was sitting alone. If you don't want to be alone, You don't have to be. I know that's a heavy thing to hear. I know that's heavy because it can feel like blame. It can feel like, well, are you saying that it's my fault that I'm here where I am and that I feel what I feel? Are you saying that it's my fault this is my current reality? No. No. Life happens. It happens, and sometimes it's not pretty. It's not nice. There are a lot of things and circumstances that happen that are not your fault at all. And once you sit down and you look at it and you're like, it's not my fault. And now what? And now what? It's not your fault that, you came from dysfunction. It's not your fault that you did not have the hallmark, Thanksgiving and Christmas. None of these things are your fault. And now what? And Naomi has to come to a similar realization. Okay, this does not look at all like what I imagined. When I left my home, I did not imagine coming back a widow without my children. I did not imagine coming back and having to live on welfare. I did not imagine, having only, one person who is kind of ostracized here because, she's a Moabite and Moabites are forbidden. None of this looks like how I imagined. But life only begins to change for Naomi when she says, and now what? This is what it is. And now what? I can keep sitting here waiting for Ruth to, bring me handouts and sitting in my misery. Or I can begin creating a new story. I can recognize that I'm not alone, never have been. I've got somebody who loves me, who has stayed right here beside me. And I know what it takes to expand this community. I know what it takes to build on the little that we have. So let's do that. All right, Ruth. Let's build on what we have. This guy seems to really like you. Let's build on that. Let's expand. And as she becomes proactive, her family grows. She moves from having just a daughter-in-law till now a daughter-in-law and her husband, and then a daughter-in-law with a husband and a baby, and now a daughter-in-law, a husband, a baby, and a community that's celebrating this new family. Her world changes. Her aloneness changes as she opens her mind to the reality that, yes, I've lost a lot, and now what? What do I do now? Let me work with what I still have. That's Naomi. Okay, who else? Elijah. Elijah is a prophet called by God to a very lonely existence. It's not fun being the person who shows up with bad news. It's not fun being the person who is then exiled, having to run for their life after delivering the bad news. It's not fun being the person who has to live with strangers and depending on the benevolence of strangers in order to survive. It's not fun. And having to do that for years, not fun. And so it is no wonder that after years of living this very lonely cycle, even though at times he's been in physical proximity with others, we realize when crisis comes and he completely emotionally collapses, he's been struggling. He's been struggling to reach a point. No, nobody becomes suicidal in just 24 hours. Nobody goes from everything is fine to I want to die in just 24 hours. There are things that have been happening and percolating below the surface and stresses that have been building up over time that when the final crisis comes, it's like, oh, okay, and here it is. And here it is. He's been struggling. And when God finally sits down and gets into a place where he's calm enough to talk, what does Elijah says? Elijah says, I'm all alone. I'm all alone. I've been doing this for years. My reward has simply been that people want to kill me, and I'm tired. I am so tired of being alone. It's a legitimate complaint. It's a legitimate feeling. A lot of his journey was done physically and mentally alone. And God doesn't chastise him for his lack of faith and his lack of strength. And you got to buck up and pull yourself. No, because that's not how humans were built to function. One of the very first things God said, looking at humanity, is it's not good for you to be alone. Imagine, in the midst of perfection, in the midst of beauty, God's like, yeah, but you're alone. I mean, yes, you've got the garden. Yes, you've got the animals. Yes, you've even got me. And yet, you're still alone. We were never, ever intended to live without the comfort, the closeness, the intimacy of humanity. Never, ever. And so when Elijah reaches his cracking point and is like, I'm alone, the first thing God says is, okay, you've been physically alone, but I need you to know that there are like 7,000 others who are in the same boat with you. You may not see them. They may not be up in your face, but you've not been alone. But I get why you feel like you have. So what I'm going to do is send you a friend. I'm going to send you somebody who is going to be with you day in, day out, all the way to the end. So at no point do you ever again feel alone. As you are going into this holiday season, look for a friend. You really only need one. If you can get through life with just one person who is your ride or die, who's going to be with you no matter what, who sees the good in you, even when all you see is the bad, you just need one. And listen, I'm telling you that all of us have the capacity to have that one. There are billions of people on this earth, and you only need one. Part of why some of us struggle is that we have been cultured to think that that one has to be a romantic partner. We have been cultured to see certain levels of vulnerability and intimacy as only belonging to romantic relationships. It's not true. Intimacy, vulnerability, closeness, all of these things can and should exist within platonic relationships. In fact, platonic relationships are where you practice the skills that will translate into your romantic relationship. If you are not getting platonic relationships right, you're going to really struggle in romantic relationships because it's the same skills. Communication, respect, all these things. Yes, Joan, that's so right. The David and Jonathan were friends. That is an excellent point. That's where you practice. You practice your platonic relationships so they can translate over into the romantic relationships. And you will make better choices in your romantic relationships when you have strong, trusting, platonic relationships, because then you're not out here, looking and searching by yourself. You have a community of people who know you, who know what you need, who know your weak spots, who can pay attention to things that you would miss. You need platonic friends. And I'm not going to get into, whether or not these platonic friends can be of the same or different gender for you. I am not going to have that argument today. I'm just going to say you need friends. You need people you can trust, you can depend on in the best of days and in the worst of days. You need friends who will sacrifice for you, friends who will be there for you, friends that you can count on no matter what. And if you don't find them right away, keep trying. If at first you don't succeed, try again. Keep looking. Again, you only need one. If you can get more, that's great. But just start looking for that one. And most likely, that first one is already somewhere in your circle. Most likely, that first one is already somebody who's been trying to hang out with you and trying to call and, hey, girl, how you doing? Hey. Most likely, you already have a one. And you've been doing the Naomi, and you have not been paying attention to the love that's right in front of your face. Look for that one. God sends Elijah his one, and his one stays with him literally until the end. Elisha says, I am not going to leave you till I can't see you anymore. I'm going to be right here at this spot, and I'm not leaving till I can't see you anymore. His friend stays with him to the very end. And that's the type of friendships that we need. I love, thank you, Joan, that you brought up David and Jonathan, because this is a wonderful example of friendship, the prince and the pauper. And yet, Jonathan says, I recognize the calling on your life, and I'm not mad about it. I recognize that even though by lineage I'm supposed to be next, the reality is that it's going to be you. It's going to be you, and I'm going to be your second. And because you're my friend, because I love you, I don't even mind. I don't mind at all. I will do whatever it takes to protect you. I will go to bat with my dad for you because you are my homeboy. I got you. Ride or die till the end. We are doing life together. You need friends. You absolutely need friends. And the last person that I want to talk about today when we're discussing feelings of aloneness, It's Jesus. We don't, very often when we talk about Jesus, we talk about God Jesus. We don't talk about human Jesus. And it's a pity because there is so much of human Jesus. Jesus is talking to the people and he shares with them the story about, eating his body, drinking his blood. And it sounds really out there. Really out there. And a lot of people are like, this is a bit much for me. He's a vampire. I can't, this is a bridge too far. Thank you for the free meals, but I think I'm going to dip now. And as all these people walk away from him, Jesus looks at his 12 and he asks, are you going to leave? Are you going to leave me too? It is such a human question. It is such a human question because it speaks to wanting closeness, wanting people who will see you and love you regardless of what anyone else thinks and what anyone else does. I get that you don't really understand my ministry. You don't really understand who I am and what I'm about and what I need to do. I get that, but we've at least been doing all this together. Are you going to leave me too? Jesus has this human emotion of saying, I kind of don't want to do all this by myself. There's a lot that I have to do by myself. There's a lot I got to do by myself. But it's nice having somebody physically here. It's nice having people to walk these dusty roads with. It's nice having people to eat with and to share with. It's nice to have a home to visit, Mary, Martha, and Lazarus. It's nice to have that. Are you guys going to leave too? Am I going to lose this little bit that I do have, the little bit of comfort and friendship that I do have? Because we're not meant to do life alone. And even Jesus recognizes, no, I'm not meant to be by myself. We fast forward to his experience in the garden. And it's one of the times it's like, I have to go by myself. And he whittles the group down. The whole group goes, and then he takes a little bit from the group and goes on. And then he's like, okay, you guys stay here. And he goes on by himself. And he's struggling. He's really, really struggling. And at some point, he gets up and he goes back to his friends. And it's heartbreaking because I imagine he would have hoped that they would have recognized how distressed he was. And even though they didn't come with him, that at least they would have been thinking about him or praying for him or at least talking with each other about him and how they could support him. And it had to be so disappointing to come back and they're all sleeping. Y'all don't realize how much I'm struggling right now. He has this very human feeling of you guys are supposed to be my boys. And at the most crucial point in my life, you are taking a nap? What? He goes back. Okay, I'm gonna keep wrestling with this thing. Comes back. Oh, y'all went. So we just talked about this, and y'all went back to sleep again. Okay, you know what? Don't even bother waking up. Don't even bother. Y'all go ahead and stay asleep. It's not going to change anything at this point anyway. But what's crazy is that after experiencing that, and then the disappointment of watching a friend deny you, and then the physical trauma of everything that has happened to him, He gets to the cross, and the part that breaks his heart isn't everything that's happening around him. It's the moment when he realizes he can't feel his Father anymore. That's the part that really breaks him down, when he realizes that this connection that I've had the entire time, it's been hard, it's been rough, I've been struggling, but I've always had this sense that I'm not alone. Like, even when other people were looking at me and they thought I was alone, I told them, no, I'm not alone. I'm never alone. My daddy has my back. And at this crucial moment, all of a sudden, I can't feel you. I can't see you. I can't feel you. How have you left me alone? How, in this most terrible time, could you leave me alone? Where are you? We were not meant to live life alone. And if even Jesus, who is, God and man, can come to a crucial point and say, where are you? Are you leaving me too? Why have you forsaken me? Why have you left me alone? How much more so you? Whatever your experience is about to be this holiday season, whatever it is when you go home, who or whatever is or is not waiting for you, you're not crazy. It's not okay to be alone. Because if even Jesus, who is God and could call 10,000 angels, and if Jesus could say, how have you left me alone? You're not crazy for feeling alone. I need you to hear that. One of my mantras, I'm crazy, but I'm not crazy. There are going to be moments where you know that you are not facing reality as it really is. You're crazy. You're a bit crazy, but you're not crazy. With everything that you have experienced, everything you have gone through, everything that you are feeling, yes, you're a little crazy right now, and that is the most logical thing to be under the circumstances. You're crazy, but you're not crazy. You were not meant to be alone. The good news is that if you don't want to be, you don't have to be. Hear me again. If you don't want to be, you don't have to be. In the moment where Jesus is crying out, how could you leave me alone? His mother is there. The women who have been his disciples and have followed him this whole time are there. And they stay with him the entire time. He feels alone, but he's not alone. In this moment, I get that it's really, really easy to feel alone. It's really easy to feel alone when you walk through the door and there's nobody and nothing on the other side. It is really easy to feel alone when other people are talking about their plans for the holiday and who they're going to spend it with and where they're going to go, and you don't have plans. It is very easy to feel alone when you want to wear the mask, a mask I wore for years, of fronting that I feel just fine about this reality when you don't. The first step is to admit, you know what? I don't like this. And I cannot have anything different till I stop pretending. Like, it's scary. It is scary to be vulnerable and admit that you have needs. But you do. You're human. Of course you do. It is part of the human experience to have needs and to need community. You're crazy, but you're not crazy. You're not meant to live alone. And if you don't want to, you don't have to. I'm serious. Let's say you call a friend and say, hey, can I join you for the holiday? Now that's vulnerable. That is scary to ask to be included, in someone else's celebration. But if you don't tell someone that you don't want to be alone, how will they know? Like, it's wonderful. It would be wonderful if people would just look and think and ask and invite. That doesn't always happen. Like this old saying, closed mouths don't get fed. Sometimes you have to be the initiator. Sometimes you have to step out and ask for what you want. Now, let's say that's a bridge too far. Let's say that's not what you don't have the strength, the fortitude to be able to be that vulnerable just yet. Don't have to be. Give. Volunteer at a soup kitchen. Go to a homeless shelter. Go to where others need what you have. And don't be alone. Every Thanksgiving, there are places, that give to those who are less fortunate. Go. Join those who are giving. Here's another tip for you. Meetup.com. Write it down. Meetup.com. It is a website where people can find groups of other individuals who have a shared interest and literally meet up. Unless you are just way out in the sticks somewhere, it is more than likely that there are, at least a few groups in your area. If you don't want to be alone, don't be. Don't be. Go downtown. Go to a park. Look at the lights. Strike up a conversation with someone. Be proactive about changing the reality you don't want. I'm not saying that it's easy. It's not. It's not at all. It is scary. Like you heard my sis when we sat down and we talked about love 2 weeks ago. And she legit had to hammer at me for over a year. Danielle, you can be safe. Let love in. I know you've gotten used to being hurt. I know you've gotten used to having your guard up. I know you are so traumatized that just the idea of somebody caring about you freaks you the heck out. Because at this point, you have now come to equate care with manipulation and this, and it all feels bad. And it's like, no, everybody stay out. And you're not happy, Danielle. Those walls are not making you happy. They may make you feel safe. They may keep out all the bad stuff. They're also keeping out all the good. They're keeping out all the things that you really, really want. And If you want to not be alone, you got to unlock the door, and then you got to open the door, and then you've got to let love in. So as we're going into this holiday season, I know for some of us, it's going to be rough. It's going to be really rough. And it's going to be scary. And it's going to feel like you're repeating the same cycle from last year and the year before. Or maybe this is about to be your first holiday being all on your own. And that's scary because now this is completely unfamiliar to you. You're doing the Naomi experience where I'm used to having a house and full and I'm by myself. You're crazy, but you're not crazy. You're crazy, but you're not crazy. You are not meant to be alone. So if you don't want to be, don't be. And I'm telling you, this is someone who is on this journey with you. I've only been healthy for about 2 years, maybe. I've only had a decent holiday season for maybe 2 years. All the rest of my life, it's been pretty gnarly. But I'm telling you, you can make the life that you want. You can create the village, the family, the tradition, the home that you want. It is available. It is all available. There are billions of people in this world, and a whole lot of them would love to love you and be loved by you. Keep looking. You tried, it didn't work. Keep looking. Because love is worth it. When I think about the love that I have in my life right now, I mean, the people who read chapters. Y'all think I write long posts on Facebook? Y'all should see some of the texts that my friends get. And they read the text and they read the screenshots and they look at the 5011 memes that I forward. And my life today is completely unrecognizable from what it was even just 2 years ago. Keep going. If you don't want to be alone, don't be. Because you were not meant to live alone. Mm-hmm. And when I say, and I want to clarify this because I know that a lot of people who listen to me are people who are inside faith communities. And while it is wonderful to find a friend in Jesus, wonderful. God said it's not good for you to be alone. Even knowing that God was going to be a companion to Adam in the garden, God said it's not good to be alone. You are meant to have other human beings who do life with you. So please do not be sitting up in your home, having another Bible study, having another fasting and prayer session, when you could be putting your faith to work and getting out there and meeting other people. Because you need people. Those people do not have to be the same race as you. Those people do not have to be the same denomination as you. I know some people are going to be freaking out. My twin Loida, I love that girl. I love that girl. We have never been the same denominationally, and it doesn't matter. You're looking for somebody who will see you here, who will love you here. That person may not be the same race. They may not be the same gender. They may not be the same orientation. They may not be the same denomination. And it doesn't matter. If they are willing to love you, if they are willing to walk through life with you, let love in. Like Chanel says, we were not meant to be alone. And if you are ready to not be alone anymore, I am telling you, on the other side of that door, love is waiting. It is there. It is absolutely there. You can start at meetup.com. That is, nobody has paid me to say that. Listen, I'm just telling you, I have used the site myself. It works. It works. Go find you some people to spend time with and to love you. Here's another tip, since I'm giving tips. FacebookDating.com. There is a feature on FacebookDating.com right now where you can filter just for friends. It is a new feature. I'm not sure how long it's been there, but it's a relatively new feature where you can find friends through the Facebook dating app. Use it. Just this past week, I found a new friend. She is delightful. She's vegan like me. It's amazing. If you don't want to be alone, don't be. Don't be. If you are willing to let go of the story, if you are willing to let go of all the things that have been holding you back, the things that are scary, the things that are vulnerable, if you're willing to reach for what you really want, it is there. Yes, Chanel, go find you some people. Yes. Listen, go find you some people. Go take a clog dancing class. I don't know. Go find some people. A pole dancing class, whatever. Go find you some people. Because you're not meant to be alone. And if you don't want to be, you don't have to be. All right. That is all I have for you today. I hope it helped. I really hope it helped. Listen, I said I'm your sister in this journey. 2 years in, I am still figuring some of this out myself. But I can tell you it is worth it. It is so worth it. Keep going. If you don't want to be, you don't have to be. I'm going to be here next Thursday, same place, same time. I'm going to be here. Don't leave me alone. You can meet me back here, same place, same time. We're going to discuss some more topics, okay? Have a wonderful rest of the week. Go find you some people, some real people. Go out there. Because if you don't want to be alone, you don't have to be. Have a great week.